How he handled having a disability that was almost overpowering. He always handled it with grace and class, and I think he set a good example for anybody who does have a disability of any sort, to know that they can get through life, and it's going to be good and it's going to be okay. And he really never let it drag him down too much. I mean, it bothered him, I think, sometimes, but as a whole, he was always positive up until the end at 22. I'm the author of Boy Giant. It was released in the year 2000, and it's still sold at the Alt Museum in CVB, and it's the story of Robert told through his brother and a lot of his friends. I mean, a lot of their memories, people that knew him. He was normal when he was born, and just a normal baby. They thought everything was absolutely fine, and then just as months went on, like after a couple months, he was really big for his age. He just kept growing, and by first year they knew something wasn't quite right, and it was really tough on him when they went to the doctor and had things figured out that he actually had a tumor on the pituitary area, and there really at that time there wasn't a way of fixing things. Back then you had to live with it. And so they knew he was going to be really, really tall, but I don't think they expected him to be almost 9 foot, in the end. He was the tallest Boy Scout ever at age 12. So he was 7 foot tall at age 12. 13 to 15, people started watching him and knowing, kind of who he was and everything. And when he got in high school, he was just like a really big thing. He did enroll in college over shirtless, but just getting around the campus, he couldn't handle it. It was just too much walking, for him, and it was difficult for him to walk, period. He did play basketball a little. People have always said that's something a lot of people don't know. And he could stand and dunk it. I mean, he could just literally raise his hand up and stuff it through the basket, but he couldn't get up and down the court. So they called him a dropper, and basically he'd just stand at the other end of the court, and whoever was on the other end of the court would get the ball and just toss it down to him, and he'd just dunk it repeatedly. So people like to have him on their team whenever he's playing. He had a really hard time getting in and out of cars. If you can imagine, he had to scrunch down, and cars had to be specially designed for him. The doors, the back door, back seat had to be a certain way, and he could barely get in and out. And his head a lot of times would go outside, the car, because he was so tall. His shoes were like huge. Basically, they had to be specially made. He had an agreement with Brown Shoe Company over in St. Louis. He toured around the country representing them. When he would go to a town, there'd be 20,000 people come from everywhere to see him. And it was like a rock star, like a U2 coming to play in town. When Robert would come in, it was just, it had spread like crazy if he was coming to town. And everywhere he went, he would be greeted. People just wanted to see him. He got a blister. He was in a parade in Michigan, and basically it just started really bothering him, so they took him to the hospital after it was over with, and they discovered he did have an infection, and it just spread. And back then, again, they didn't have the medicines and things they have now, and he was really sick, and so they invited the rest of the family they wanted the rest of the family to come there, and they were all there when he actually died. There were 40,000 people that went through the Streeper Funeral Home at that time. I don't think he realized he was going to die, when he did die. He's only 22. He didn't have an easy life, and it was very hard on his mother. His mother burned all his clothing, or not all of it, but a very good part of it once he died. She started a bonfire in the backyard. She didn't want his memory to be world's tallest man. She wanted him just to be remembered as Robert. her son and, you know, the person he was. He was a really gentle, kind human being, always a gentleman, never fought with anybody or anything like that. Deep down, he was just like everybody else, and a lot of people here just loved him. And he was treated different here. He was still gawked at, but a lot of people were more, you know, they didn't just stand and look when he was in Alton. They didn't look at him as Robert Wadlow, the world's tallest man. He was Robert Wadlow to them.